So what is going on, everyone? Fernando Silva here with another video, and today I wanted to talk about the all-new iPad 9 or the standard iPad or whatever Apple is calling this iPad, because it never really got an actual moniker. So I think it's just the standard iPad, the entry-level iPad that Apple's selling. They upgraded it. Now this iPad is the last iPad to keep that legacy form factor, right? The big chin, the big bezels, the big forehead, the classic home button. And again, this is the last iPad to have that. So most likely in the next few years, we'll probably have a redesign of this iPad, but for the time being, this is what we have today. And what I wanted to do is figure out who this was for, because I do think that Apple has a very, very strong target demographic, and it has to do with education and especially virtual education. But let's get into it, talk about the specs, figure out what's new, and if it's worth going from, the iPad 8 to this new iPad 9, because you'll be surprised. Let's hit it. So first off, let's talk about availability and price. So availability, it's already open for pre-orders. You don't have to wait until the Friday like the iPhones to pre-order them. So if you want to jump into the Apple Store, pre-order one, you can go ahead and do that. And they start at $329. So pretty good entry level point for a 64 gigabyte model. And that's a new thing as well. So previously with these standard iPads, they would come in the 32 gigabyte variant or 128. This year, they actually doubled both of those. So you start off at 64 gigs because 32 gigabytes of storage at this time in 2021, almost 2022, is not going to get you anywhere, right? Apps and the actual operating system itself with iPadOS 15 is going to take up like 10 gigabytes itself. So again, I'm glad that Apple moved us from 32 to 64 standard, and that's again $329. And if you want to go to 256, it's $479, so $480 for that iPad 9 gen. I keep wanting to say iPad mini, but no, it's just the iPad 9 generation. And again, another big hack, and I'll leave a link to the video of how I do this, just go to the education store. I think in the education store you get $30 off, and they don't ask for any identification, any verification. You just go to the education store and buy whatever you want as if it's a normal Apple product, because it is. So that's how I got my MacBook Air, that's how I get the iPad. I don't do that with the iPhones, but when it comes to education stuff, go to the education store, because they either take some money off or maybe throw in a free pair of AirPods or Beats or something like that. So now we got that out of the way, let's talk about the design. So the design itself is identical to last year's, down to the weight, the size, everything is exactly the same, down to the gram of weight. So if you have the iPad 8 generation, there's gonna be no physical difference in terms of what you're seeing and what you're feeling with this iPad 9. So make sure you keep that in mind. One thing that they did remove was the actual white bezels. In years past, you get the space gray variant, which had black bezels, and then you could get the silver variant, which had white bezels. But now you can still get space gray or silver on the rear, but both of those variants will now have black bezels all around. So say goodbye to white bezels. If you guys really like white bezels, unfortunately, those are no longer. And I think the reasoning Apple is doing that is because they're trying to get people ready for when the iPad 10 comes out or iPad 11, probably going to be more bezel-less, and it's going to follow that same form factor as a mini, the iPad Air, the iPad Pro, with the all black uniform bezels all around. So that's why I think Apple's moving away from those white bezels with this new 9th generation iPad. So you're asking, Fernando, why would you upgrade if everything is identical, everything seems the same? So the reason Apple upgraded this, they brought in a couple of things which were wanted from the iPad Pros or the higher end iPads, right? The first thing was in the display. So last year with the iPad 8, we brought the Retina display to that standard iPad level, which was the first time. So we got a nice screen upgrade. It made it a lot more usable. It made it a lot friendlier to use, and it just made it feel a little bit more pro, right? It made it feel a little bit more crisp to use the Retina display. This year, they're actually bringing True Tone over from the iPad Pros and iPad Air. So True Tone is basically what these blue light glasses are doing right now, which is so depending on the ambient light around you, it'll sense that, and it'll start to not only dim the screen depending on how bright it is outside, but also change the color from warmer tones to cooler tones depending on what time of day it is, how dark it is, even what the weather is outside and things like that. So True Tone is actually a very welcome upgrade to these screens, especially because again, this is going to be an education first thing. So a lot of kids are going to have this, and the last thing Apple wants is for their eyes to be fully affected by like a lesser screen when they have the capability to throw True Tone in there. So that is the first actual physical or tangible upgrade that you can actually see and use. Then internally what they did was they got rid of the A12 chip and they put the A13 Bionic chip into these guys. So these A13 Bionic chips were the same chipsets that were in the iPhone 11 series, which is honestly my daily driver. So that's an iPhone 11 Pro. So the A13 Bionic should be a nice welcome upgrade. They're saying 20% CPU, 40% increase in GPU, which again, they're just numbers, but at the same time, what that really does is give you longevity moving forward, right? The higher up you are on these A13, 14, 15, that means these things are just gonna last longer for you. They're gonna get faster updates for you. They're gonna get updates for longer, right? So that is what I think the A13 is there for. It's to speed up everything, yes, a little bit, and get it a little bit more into 2021, or I guess 2019, because that's when the 11s came out. But again, it's a very capable chipset. I use it every single day with this iPhone 11 Pro Max. So it should be able to fully run iPadOS 15 on this iPad 9 generation. And then the last change that they made, again, this is very, very minimal in terms of the amount of changes that they made. The last change that they made was in the selfie camera. They went from the 7 megapixel to a 12 megapixel shooter on the front because, again, we're in this virtual learning, in this Zoom world, in this video chat world that's constantly happening. So they wanted to upgrade that 12 megapixel camera, and then they also brought center stage. So that means you get 120-degree viewing angles with that camera, and it'll move around and kind of almost gimbal-like. I'll put some B-roll of what center stage looks like. It's a very cool feature to have. Again, it doesn't really change fundamentally how you use FaceTime or how you video chat. It's just, again, like a cool thing to see, especially if you have multiple people on one screen. So again, they're bringing center stage. The biggest thing about that isn't really the center stage, but more so like how much more you can get in that one shot. So again, let's go to the age-old question as to who this is for, right? Because now in the lineup, we have the iPad Pros, which are for the pro people, right? You know, I have an iPad Pro, no big whoop, right? Then you have the iPad Air 4, which is for those people that want an 11-inch screen, but don't really want to spend so much money on the internal specs and just want something that looks like it belongs in 2021. Then you have the iPad Mini, which is even a smaller form factor now, especially with the cool new form factor that they adopted from the iPad Air. But then you have the iPad 9th generation, right? And I think that this is going to be for, again, education big time, right? The addition of new center stage and the wide angle cameras, the addition of the A13 chip to be able to process just a little bit more at the same time. And now iPadOS 15 coming standard with these new iPad 9th generations. This is, again, going to be a virtual learning machine. And if you saw the way Apple presented these iPads, especially this 9th generation iPad, they focused on three things, right? They focused on e-learning, they focused on gaming, and they focused on leisure. So again, this is for that student that's virtually learning or also in-class learning with these iPads. It's for the teachers that are putting lesson plans together and they want to send it out to all their students the night before so they're ready for the next day. You know, it's for, you know, those parents that want to give their child something to distract them with for like a 1-hour car ride and just give that child a gaming device to play with in the back seat. So I think that's what these use cases are for this $330 iPad, because it's as capable as a lot of these other iPads like the iPad Pro. Because remember, Apple is not differentiating iPadOS 15 on how much money you spend. iPadOS 15 is going to work like iPadOS 15 whether you have a $2,500 fully spec M1 iPad with 2 terabytes of storage, 16 gigs of RAM. That same iPadOS 15 software is going to run on a $330 iPad 9th generation with a 2-year-old chipset. And that's the bittersweet thing about Apple and how they disperse these software updates, right? With iPadOS 15, yeah, it's amazing that everything down the line is going to get it, but at the same time, some people wish that in the Pro models you got a little bit more, but Apple will never do that. They're going to keep everything uniform so the experience is the same throughout, no matter how much money you're spending, which I think is a very, very cool thing to see. So that's who I think this is for. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is it's going to be very impressive, right? You have a $330 iPad. You can go to Logitech, get their Combo Touch for I think it's $130 or $150. For under $500, you have a very capable computer with a trackpad, with a keyboard, you know, with iPadOS, with Safari, a desktop class browser, with the App Store that has millions and millions of applications made for the iPad. So for $500, tell me another computing device that's going to get you from point A to point B like this iPad will, right? $500 gets you a lowly spec Chromebook, you know, which you can't really do much. Forget about getting a Microsoft computer for $500. I don't even know what that gets you, right? Maybe you got cloud computing, but for $500, you can get the entry-level iPad, the Combo Touch, and you have a laptop, guys. You have a computer that's ready to get work done, that's ready for leisure, that's ready for gaming. And then again, it also still works with that Apple Pencil 1, which is another $100. To each their own if you want to get the Apple Pencil and if you need it, which some people might. But again, so for $600, Apple Pencil, iPad, Combo Touch keyboard, I think that's a win. That's a big win for Apple as long as you can get over the fact that it's kind of like the legacy form factor with the physical home button and things like that. But overall, I'm impressed with the entire iPad lineup. Apple clearly has all of the market share in America, at least when it comes to tablets. I have not seen a non-Apple tablet out in the wild in years. It has been a very, very, very long time since I've seen, you know, like a Samsung tablet in the wild, or even back in the day when the Nexus 7 was out. That was a cool one. But again, Apple just solidified themselves as the tablet market leader, and they're going to continue to do so. But that is my 2 cents on this new iPad 9. I think this is the student's computer moving forward, a cheap entry point, low barrier to entry, easy to use, very familiar, especially if you have an iPhone, because if you have an iPhone, you're going to be able to use an iPad very, very quickly with very little learning curve, right? But that is my 2 cents. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know in the comments below. Do you guys plan to pick one up? Do you guys have the 8th generation one and still want to upgrade? What would make you want to upgrade exactly? Or which ones do you have right now and are willing to upgrade to the 8th or the 9th generation one? I'm always curious to find out what you guys would use it for. Is it something that maybe you would skip out on, or maybe you would spend a little bit more money and just get the iPad Air 4? Always curious to know. But that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Until next time.